The reality is you should pick something that like affects you personally or that you experience. YC was game changing for me because I was an outsider in Canada. I actually think that it's going to take a generational shift.
Awesome. I guess just to get started, like, one, you're an entrepreneur and you started your company, and I hear really good things about like what you're doing, and you went through Y Combinator, Winter 23 with me.
Summer
Oh, no, no, sorry,
21.
Summer 21. I'm sorry. Sorry,
Summer
Summer
21.
21.
Different one. Different one. That's okay.
Different one. But I felt like you had a lot of experience and we're in the same space. And I got super excited talking to you. And I felt like there was a lot of energy and excitement around like the space you're in. I guess one, like you went through Y Combinator in 21. How was that experience for you? Was that were you starting? Did you start the company and get in, or did you get in and start the company? Like, how did you get to that point?
So we definitely started a company before and got in. Where do I start with that? I guess, yeah, YC was a big change for us. Like I'm Canadian, don't hold it against me. But Canada is this like land of oligopolies, you know? And if you're starting a company, if you're Canadian and you're starting a company in Canada, you just really haven't been exposed to like what real business could be like. And because Canada, you know, people it's like super socialist. It's a very American thing for me to say now that I'm living in the US, but it's super socialist and the attitude of people when it comes to business is such that they like oligopolies. People use like one or two providers. So like you kind of what YC did for me was it was like opened up this door from a different type of thinking in Canada. Like in Canada, I remember trying to sell. This is when we had Mizumigo and we were doing just B2B payments in Canada and trying to sell B2B payments to like a Canadian business. And they're like, oh well, like why is this different than RBC or TD or BMO? There's like five banks, right? And it was almost like in order for them to be convinced that they should use you, you had to be a monolith. Like the amount of early adopters of anything there is like very minuscule. And so it makes it like from a cultural perspective, it makes it more challenging to build a new business that is like I would call like critical infrastructure. I mean, you could say like payments and banking is like critical infrastructure. I mean, sure, I have this new spreadsheet tool, whatever. That's totally different than, hey, I'm gonna like replace your banking or payment stack. Like telling a Canadian business that you're gonna replace their banking or payment stack is like a like good luck with that. You know, and I've seen companies trying to build banking in Canada. Now, I mean, we're out of it now. We've sold off that product of the business. And like it just looks really hard. And I know it is because I've had those conversations. No, to top it all off, there's only like 1.2 million businesses total, right? It's just a small market. Anyway, YC basically opened the door to this whole new world. We did it during COVID, so it was remote, but we came to the Bay anyway. So like, and we were like the biggest batch. I think it was like 400 people in our batch. It was fucking crazy. And there was a small group that I was in, which was all fintech companies. So like, dude, I was in kind of a cracked group. Like our group was like I think there was six of us. It was like Forage. I don't know if you know like Forage, like Get Forage, Slash, and Slope, and then there's us. And I remember the funny thing at the time is like when we did the batch, we were the only one with real transaction volume. Like we were moving millions of dollars a month when we were in the batch. And all of the other like Forage and Slope and like Slash, they hadn't even fucking launched yet. I think they launched like near the end. And we were raising for this Canadian product, and they were raising money like way easier than us. And we were struggling because everyone fucking hated Canada. Actually, I wrote a Bookface article about this. Like everyone hates Canada. And then the night before demo day, I like get on a call with Brad Flora, our partner, and I was like, dude, everyone fucking hates demo day. Like, what do we? He's like, let's just pivot to the US. And so like the night before demo day, we changed my whole like demo day pitch to be about US banking for construction. And we literally just like made it up, just there on that night before. And we went in, we pitched it at 140 calls and raised 2 million bucks on like a 10-page slide deck with a ton of volume in Canada. Like we were processing 5 million bucks a day. Like we were getting pretty big, but nobody gave a shit. And we ended up raising money for this new product. and we sold off the assets of the Canadian thing and ended up pivoting like a year later. Is a whole other fucking story. Yeah, it definitely opened the doors for us. But I don't know, there's like a bit of a bias towards like building a US business and not just a Canadian based business. But for Canadian founders or even Indian founders, like going to San Francisco and getting exposed to like that type of investors and environment, and Americans just love like buying new shit. Like they like their new shit. The coolest, newest thing, they're in on it. And that's what I love about building business in the US. That was
So
a
like
long-winded answer, sorry.
so you're saying you okay, so you went to school in Canada. You started a company in Canada, which a lot of people don't do. So like that's unique and abnormal for like someone in Canada. But you said your thinking was different after YC. Like, but you went into YC with a company that was successful-ish, right? You were like running,
Well, okay, I would say we were processing a lot of money. We weren't making any money. So we were two engineers, and we got into YC, and we were processing millions of dollars. And I remember them sitting, like Brad sitting us down, being like, "Yo, like you guys are processing all this money, but you don't make any fucking money. Like you need revenue." And so there was obviously this, as two engineers, the like business side lessons of like, "Oh shit, like yeah, we have this. We're just like giving away this payment thing for free. We need another way to make revenue." And we spent YC trying to build like cards, I think we tried to build cards, lending for Canada, and just ran into this like we ran into this oligopoly structure in Canada that prevented us from launching these really cool products. And the economics were so broken. Like just to give you an idea on like a card program for the fintech nerds out there, like let's say you have a card program, your gross interchange might be like 250, 220 to 250, depending on the, the level of transaction or the types of transactions you have. In Canada, it's like 150. Like it was dog shit. And then the partner fees, I mean, dude, I remember we got a quote. I can't say who, obviously, because fucking, well, maybe the NDA expired. I can't remember. But it was like, we're netting like 110 bips. And it was just like, what the fuck is this? What do you do with that? If you look at the card programs in Canada, dude, that's what they're operating in today. So combine that with a smaller market size, okay, conservative culture, like what do you have? You don't have a VC, like you kind of have a VC backed business, but not really. And if you look at the makeup of companies, like how many successful fintechs in Canada? I can name them in one hand, like less, right? And it's yeah, and the reason why is because just the numbers don't work. Whereas in the States, I mean, dude, like there's a successful fintech for every industry. Just 5 successful fintechs for every industry. There will be.
but I'm just gonna nail on this one question I have. It's you did start a company in Canada. Like why doesn't everyone do that? Like why did you and your co-founder get together? Was it like you didn't like the
Oh,
opportunities there? Like what was it?
oh, dude, like, yeah. I don't know. That's just me. I haven't had a different type of job. Yeah, like,
You just
yeah.
were like, I'm gonna graduate college and I'm gonna start building this
Well,
company.
okay. Yeah, so crazy. I think like when I was in computer science, you had to do co-op. So in Canada, by the way, Canadian engineers are just like like really good, from my experience anyway. The in Canada, when you go to school to do computer science in Canada or software engineering in Canada, you have to do co-ops. You have to do 16 months of work experience to get your degree. So like when you hire a Canadian engineer, they're coming out with like they already know what they're doing. And so when I was applying to my jobs, it's like super hard to get your first co-op. And I was kind of lazy about it. I think I applied to 10 places and I was like, oh fuck it, I figured out that you could do a self-directed co-op. And so I was like, okay, I'll do a self-directed. So I went and saw like the co-op guy and I was like, yo, and co-op is internship, by the way. We don't have unpaid internships are illegal in Canada. So we call them co-ops because you're working and getting paid. And so basically I went to the guy and I was like, hey, I just want to do the self-directed thing. And he's like, sure, just like come up with an idea and write a proposal. And then, oh, by the way, there's these grants that you can get that will pay you while you do this. I was like, what? Sick. So I came up with this idea, put together this thing, and then I got grants to hire 3 of my friends. So I was in the competitive programming club, and I hired 3 of my friends from the competitive programming club, and we spent a semester playing StarCraft 2. Like, it was awesome. Yeah, that was like, I don't know, it was like January 2018. I mean, we were building this like marketplace thing. We probably spent like 4 hours working like the rest of the time playing competitive StarCraft 2. Like that was the semester. It was pretty sick. And then, dude, what happened was I just kept going. Like I just kept going, and we stopped playing StarCraft 2, and we started building this thing. And then I think like fast after like a bunch of stupid stuff that we had done, fast forward like a year later to January, I think I was going to school again, taking like 3 classes. I was basically done my degree. I had like 7 courses left. And I had this epiphany from talking to all these SMB, these like small businesses. I was like calling people on Craigslist and like service businesses on Craigslist to try and sell them software. And I figured out that they were all still taking checks. And I was like, damn, like how many checks are being processed every year? Like this is a big issue. And ended up like somehow getting a connection to the Bank of Montreal. And kind of fast forward 3 months, like summer of 2019, Nick and I built this integration into the Bank of Montreal. And this is kind of crazy. Canada was like Canada. Let's just say Canada's like the wild west of fintech regulation. I don't know if you actually look like a week ago, they announced that it's finally being regulated, and as a fintech in Canada, you have to register with the Bank of Canada now. Because before you get an MSB license, and it didn't do anything. It was like an online form. You got it in like 20 minutes. Like it did nothing. You had to go get a bank partner. Now it's real formal. Anyway, back then, summer of 2019, we ended up getting this like partnership with the Bank of Montreal. And Bank of Montreal basically said, here's this SFTP upload and download file, and here's an FBO account with a $250 million limit on it. Just go, like just do what you want. And so we ended up building 2 APIs. We built this banking engine API, which essentially translated that SFTP batch upload, by formatted text file upload into a REST API for doing transactions of no limit. And then we built another API that hooked into that, and that was our like front end processing thing. And so you could just like at the end of the summer, we had this system. We did our first 10K transaction with a construction company, by the way. And basically, it was like a 10K transaction. You just put in like an email address and an amount of money, and you could like send it, and it was all just like it just fucking worked. And there was no plaid in Canada, by the way. We had this thing called Flinks, which fucking sucks and didn't work properly. And so we had to build our own micro deposit verification. We had some fraud on that because we built it the wrong way the first time. So like it was interesting building fintech in Canada at that time. There was nothing. Like it was like the raw days. When we came to the States, everything was like much more built out, much more regulated. So it was kind of cool going to see like, hey, this is what like it was when you could do whatever you wanted. There were downsides to that. And the downsides were like, couldn't really launch a card program. Like you kind of could, but not really. And there was like all these other products that were sort of gate locked because there's no open banking from the big banks. So we had this like one thing that we could do, and you just couldn't really charge for it. And that was kind of the problem. I think we charged $2 a transaction, but there were no limit transactions. So like people only really used us for big payments because that was what the problem that we were solving, but you couldn't charge for it. If you charged like 1%, they'd be, fuck it, it's not worth it, I'll use a check. Anyway, so we ended up in this like kind of weird spot and took all those lessons and went to the States. But I think the question you asked was like, how did I start on that? But I started from doing a co-op and playing StarCraft 2. Yeah, that's kind of how it started.
It does sound like there's a good part of Canada which incentivizes starting, and you got that like kick from them where like
Yeah.
they give you this little bit of money to like play StarCraft and
Yes.
brainstorm on ideas.
Yeah, they still do that today with like Canada gives a lot of tech grants to keep your tech in Canada. So they have this other program called Shred. So our whole dev team is still in Canada because Canada has all these incentives to keep your technology in Canada. So they pay for the pleasure of doing the business with you.
Yeah, so actually relate a lot with this journey because I was actually based in Canada for like, a couple of years. Actually graduated from
Oh,
Humber
okay.
College. I don't know if you know Humber College based in Toronto. So I was there and actually, faced a lot of inefficiencies in the fintech ecosystem there because the oligopoly which you're saying, it's this Freedom Mobile. Rogers owns everything in Toronto there,
Dude, literally
right?
everything. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one of the inefficiency that I really faced in Canada was the Interac e-transfer, right?
Oh my
Because
fucking God. Don't get me started on this thing, dude. Don't get me started
yeah,
on e-transfer. If you ask a Canadian, they think
mhm,
it's good. They
exactly,
think
exactly,
you ask them, he's like, oh, what do you think of e-transfer? Oh, I love e-transfer. And I'm like, oh my God, they have no idea what a good payment system is. They're
correct.
literally fucking clueless. And they're all stuck on this e-transfer thing. Sorry, Harsh.
Yeah, so I know that was actually my question itself, because in India, we have this thing called UPI. It's like Unified Payment Interface. You just scan the code, do the payment, put in your PIN. That's it. It just happens in like 3 seconds. Everybody from the most like remote village to the most advanced urban cities, everybody uses UPI payment. So seeing this, and now in Canada, because I thought, okay, Canada, it's amazing, and why is this inefficiency there? So can you like expand on this? Like, what exactly do you think is wrong here? Because is this so difficult? I don't know how to even put it in words. Is this so difficult to like you have to enter your email, and then there's this thing called a password? I mean, can you like expand on this, like with your experience, and like what are the inefficiencies here, and how this can be solved, or what are the better ways that you've seen in the
Dude,
US, in the
it's
States?
it's nepotism. So like in Canada, a lot of this stuff is nepotism, meaning, and not like on an individual level, but on an oligopol level. So think like, the Bank of Canada or the government says, we need an innovative payment system. Let's go ask TD and BMO and RBC, right? Instead of saying, let's get a startup to build something cool and innovative for us that has some bar of success, let's go ask the mafia of banks that control the whole system, and let's get them to build something for us. And they just really just don't know what the fuck they're doing. And that was part of the problem. And then they're just bought into this system that doesn't really work. I mean, dude, the startup neobanks in Canada today still don't have access to e-transfer. Like, you can only really get access through the big banks. And it's like the opposite of the States. In the States, all the small banks play, and actually, as a small bank, you get some kickback, you get some incentive because you're a small bank. In Canada, it's actually the opposite. You get incentive, and you get the benefits of being big. And even in the payment processing system. So in Payments Canada, because oh my God, we spent so much time building with this. If you actually go to Payments Canada's website, there's only like 13 or 14 processing partners for Payments Canada. So this is very different than NACHA. So Payments Canada is like the same thing as NACHA. And the overnight settlement is happening at Payments Canada with only like 13 partners, right? And so what are the small banks doing? So the small banks are all aggregating through, I think it's called Central One, through this credit software or whatever. And they're all aggregating. So what happened in those early days, Harsh, you might remember, if you were at a credit union, your e-transfers were slower. Like if you were at a credit union, you were sending an e-transfer, it was like an extra 30 minutes or whatever, because it was running on a batch process. Whereas if you were at RBC, your e-transfer was usually like five minutes or whatever. People would say, oh, I want to go. And under the hood, what's happening is that Central One is batching all these transactions based on a fucking file upload system. No REST APIs, folks. No. We're talking batch upload file system, byte formatted text files, okay? And that's how they built it. Let's build a payment protocol over email. Email is the most unsecure thing. And so what happened under the hood, what they're not talking about is there's so much fraud. So everyone complained about e-transfer limits. Why is there a limit? Because there's so much fucking fraud. Because all I would have to do is hack fucking Nancy's email, run a bot on the email to wait for an e-transfer to come in, click on the e-transfer thing, and it'd be like, the password is like, what's your first name? Nancy? Accept the money, see you later. So then, as a solution, they added e-transfer auto deposit, which was like a verification method so that when you put in someone's email, it's set up for auto deposit into their account to prevent this type of phishing fraud. That's also plagued with problems, because then it's like, oh, then I can only select one bank, if I want to like get this money and choose a different bank to put in. It's so dumb, right? Then Wealthsimple came up with this. Wealthsimple, the guys at Wealthsimple are actually really smart. So the guys at Wealthsimple said, well, this is fucking stupid. Let's try and compete and build a consumer payment system that would compete with something like Venmo in the States or Cash App. And they came up with this thing called, I think it's called Wealthsimple Cash. It's fucking awesome, by the way. I have it. The problem is that Canadians, this is the thing, they love their oligopolies. It didn't get the adoption that it should have. But Wealthsimple Cash operates on a unique identifier. Put in the unique identifier of the person, similar to what you're talking about, and it verifies, says who that person is. I click send. right? It's a network-based payment system with a unique identifier. It's the e-transfer auto deposit, but it's just built into the system. If it had taken off, they could have built in QR codes. They could have done request with push. One of the things e-transfer did well or semi well was request with push, where if you did request an e-transfer, it was a push-based payment rather than a pull-based payment. The problem is that it's not interoperable with payment systems or checkout. And I think one of the big things that we see today is that checkout, and Visa and MasterCard play a big part in this, but I don't know what it's like in India. But in India, when you go and pay for something online, like e-commerce, can you use that payment system to pay on e-commerce? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a scan code. You just just
Scan
scan
code,
it
you
and
put
just
in the
pay.
thing.
Yeah.
Transaction fees are lower for the merchant, right? And the problem with these payment systems that people build, like in Canada, e-transfer should fucking be on a checkout system. Like there should be a payment system that is a pushed. There should be more, and the States has this problem too. There's no push-based payment system for checkout, right? Like if I go and buy something on Amazon, I should be able to just, or let's say a small merchant, I should be able to push a payment from my account that is irreversible, right? So let's say I'm like, and this is a good example to tangent into trust. Let's say I'm paying a construction company a $10,000 deposit to do work on my house. They send me the invoice, I scan the QR code, I look at the invoice, I click agree, I push the money to them. I don't have to enter their routing number, all the bullshit. Like maybe there's a selfie verification, right? Does a selfie verification in my app. I push the money to them. What do we do today instead? We do an ACH debit, which is fucking full of fraud. And Daniel and Harsh, you guys know this. Fraudsters are just having a fucking heyday because they can sign up for accounts with stuff like Trust and Just Paid. They can do this like small amounts of cash movement, and then they can do these ACH debit frauds. This is the type of stuff that, like, dude, India is now more advanced in payment systems than the United States and in Canada. Canada did start out good. I don't know if you know this, but Canada was like one of the first with the chip pin thing. The chip pin thing. Americans
What do you mean,
treat like
like the chip on the
so, dude.
card?
Yeah, dude. Like back in like 2012, like we had chips on our cards, chip and pin, back in like 2012. Like, and the amount of chargeback fraud on cards is way less. Like the amount of card theft and stuff is way less in Canada than the States. The States, I'll tell you, like, what's interesting about markets, like when you have an oligopoly market like Canada, or even some like sort of like India, it's actually easier to implement a universal change for a system. The problem is that you could go wrong. Like the chance of errors is really high. Whereas a system like the States, because it's so competitive and the market is so big, implementing a universal change like the pin chip thing takes a lot longer and is harder to do. And so in Canada, the card fraud is way less, and hence the interchange is actually lower because the fraud is less. I think that's why. Maybe. Don't quote me on that. I don't know. But like, dude, the first time I went to the States and put my credit card at a restaurant, the guy walked away with my credit card. I was like, almost had a heart attack. I was like, in Canada, you never fucking let anyone walk away with your card. Like, it's like against your contract. Like you can't. Yeah, like in Canada, when you go to a restaurant, or actually everywhere in the world except for the United States, you would never let someone walk away with your credit card. Like it's not a thing. Whereas in the US, it's normal. They take your card, they walk away with it. But in reality, dude, that's a big, like, I mean, I'm sure there's restaurants under there where the owner is getting a kickback from some fucking fraud engine somewhere where they're skimming every fucking card that goes through this thing, right? Because they walk back with the card and you lose sight of it. What's going on there? I find it super strange that we find that acceptable.
That actually happened to my parents where they were at a restaurant and they handed the person the card and they walked away, and like 5 weeks later there was all this fraud because they had the card. This is years ago. They would have
Yeah.
this reader was a carbon copy reader.
The chip and pin thing kind of solves for that behavior, but at the restaurants they still scan it, but now you can't just like run a bunch of online transactions with just that information, so it makes it more difficult.
Yeah, which is insane in the United States. I mean, I even get scared with like Apple Pay. Sometimes they're like, hand me your phone, I'm going to go into the back with the phone, and I'm like, what are they going to do with my
What? What? No, I would never. I'd be like, I'll come with you.
That's why I'm like, I always default back to just giving them a card
uh,
because like usually Apple
yeah.
Pay is in front of you and you just ding it and it's just like done.
Uh,
But sometimes there in the United States, it's like this habit where some people will have to go into like a certain area to like run the charge. So
But cards, like, let's be real here. Cards should be a thing of the past. Like, we have all the tech now where cards should not even fucking exist. Like, you should not even need a fucking card. And like Visa and MasterCard don't want you to think this, but the reality is that there is way lower cost. Like the gas fees on transacting today are way too high with cards. Like, it just makes no sense. If we had a full like push to payment system like they do in India, dude, you could lower the gas fees way lower. Like you could get cents to the transaction. And businesses, I mean, dude, look, we make interchange. Like I don't want to shoot myself in the foot. We also do merchant acquiring, so we also get paid on the other side too. I want to shoot myself in the foot here. But the reality is, from a business efficiency standpoint, it's not needed. Like we don't, we're and I think like, I mean, in Asia, they have these systems now where it's like scan your face or QR code. And if you have a network-based payment like that, you don't need to pay all these crazy fees for the card. I mean, sure, you can pay for debt, but um, yeah, like the amount of authentication we have with your phone and selfie verification and stuff, like every payment should just be a push authenticated payment that you make. There should never be, like, we could remove pull payments from everything and it would remove all of this chargeback nonsense. Yes, that was you in the Apple store that bought that fucking iPhone, you lying piece of shit. You did a fucking selfie verification when you bought the thing. Like, don't fuck around, you know? Yeah, there's no like fudging it anymore, right? Whereas the reason why we have chargebacks is because, like, how are you supposed to verify that that person was actually there in that Apple store that bought that thing, you know? But we have the tech now. We don't even, yeah, we could and should have moved off of this a while ago. But I think the problem is what I said, where there's so many partner banks that trying to get the whole thing to move. Wait, dude, they have Fed now and RTP? Why? Like, what? Like, why do we need both? Like, someone explain that to me. Is it because like half the group was like, fuck you, I don't want to use your new system, and the other half was like, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
I mean
it's
my
weird.
understanding of that is the government was like, we need something that's government created, not corporation created. So we're gonna like make sure we have a kind of a safety control on it because if the corporations do something messy, you never know. The corporations can do whatever they want with whatever products they create. So
True. I
you
mean, the
know,
government, I mean, but the problem is the government is too fucking inefficient and loose. Like, so we have this issue where
yeah,
like there should still, yeah, and I think that's why people still lean towards crypto. Like, not to like put this conversation in the gutter right now, but like, people still lean towards crypto as the potential salvation to this because it's a protocol that is like, oh, we can potentially universally accept this thing. The problem is that you still need a central bank to regulate any kind of currency. Otherwise, you get what happened in the last 3 years, which was you get all these people that are in custody of these funds, and they're like, oh wow, I have all this money. Ooh, like there's no regulator looking over my shoulder. I might not get jail time. Well, now they're figuring out that they get jail time, but for a while there, they thought they were scot free,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Definitely not talking about SBF there, but I get what he's saying.
I mean, he's one of many. Dude, there's other ones. There's some in Canada where the guys, like, I think one guy, like, totally disappeared and, like, faked his own death or something. Like, there
Yeah,
was one in
yeah,
Canada
yeah.
where
He
he,
came
like,
to
faked
India,
his own
faked
death.
his own death. Yeah,
They still
I know
haven't
that
found
one.
him. They
The
still haven't
crypto
found him. He
king.
could actually be
Yeah.
dead. The crypto king. He could actually be dead, but whatever. But basically, and dude, you know what this reminds me of? And I've said this before, and for, like, correct me if I'm totally wrong here, but it reminds me of like back in the 1800s before there was a central bank. They had banks that had gold, and you would go with your money and store your gold. And then one day people would show up and there's fucking no gold there. It's like it's gone. And then they're like, oh shit, we need this central institution to regulate these things. Otherwise, people lose their money. And it's like we just replayed history, but in the digital world. So hopefully, like I'm definitely pro the need for a push-based protocol that is universally accepted. And if the government wants to use crypto for that, fine, but it still has to be implemented by some regulating body that says, do you actually have the fucking assets that people are storing with you? Like, and I'm going in and I'm checking, and if you don't, you're going to fucking jail. Like, And if we don't have that mechanism, people are fucking greedy and they're going to steal the money.
Let's dive a little bit more into like the crypto space. Like, it sounds like it's not needed. What you're saying is what's really needed for everyone to operate at a better level as a country is push-based verification, where I'm sending you money, but it's on me to take a selfie, biometric or
Whatever the
something.
biometric thing is. Yeah, like if I'm requesting, and look, the small payments have been solved because it's a lot easier to solve that. Like Venmo and Cash App has sort of solved this like small payment space. Hasn't solved the micro payments, that's a whole different thing, but probably not that important in my opinion. The like big payment space, like dude, look at the check usage and stuff like that. It's just off the it's like 14 billion checks a year or something that are written. It's stupid.
Yeah.
The solution is, yeah, like, and imagine a business use case. So like I'm a business user, my accountant is going to pay a bill. I get a notification from my app, right? The app does a selfie verification, and hey, you could have dual. I could do a selfie verification, agree to push, goes to my co-founder on his cell phone, agree to push, selfie verification. Then it pushes from our account to their account. It's irreversible. And there's no need to collect banking information. It's a single identifier system, right? So this single identifier is linked to this business entity, right? And then when you have stuff like money laundering and things like that, by that single identifier being linked within the network to this, like this identifier is linked to this legal entity with this EIN, this corporate status. These are the officers of this business. There's like a tangible record of the authorization of the transactions that touch that identifier. And that's on the business level, but that's what we need. And the gas fees, the other thing is people get really greedy with payments. And so when you're talking about the gas fees, like I should be able to send, like let's say I'm paying somebody, I should be able to pay them for nothing. Like I should be able to pay that 50 grand. Maybe I'm paying a SaaS fee for the extra authentication service that I'm using to verify that payment, but I'm not going to pay 1% of 50 grand to send that. Fuck that, I'll write a check. And that's what people are saying today is like they don't want to use these online systems because they want to write a check. The other thing is speed. The settlement is happening at the end of business day with a file-based clearing system at Natcha. Like, what a fucking joke. There's literally byte formatted text files that people are writing, and there's a million APIs that have done this now, but like, it's so ridiculous, And a lot of transactions are batched. So it just trickles down into everything. I mean, even Stripe payouts are batched, so it makes it difficult to reconcile. All of it is like this trickle down issues from a batch-based clearing system that is pull. Whereas if you had these single identifiers with push authentication, even your accounting, all the way down to your accounting integration becomes trivial. Because, hey, I paid this invoice. Dude, you can even have the invoice linked to the transaction in the network. I mean, fuck's sake. Like right now we use, what is it, like max 10 characters, right? Oh, sorry guys, we don't have enough. We have enough fucking underground bunkers of processing for AI, but we have a max 10 character limit on our fucking payment system? Are you joking? Like, that's how behind this shit is. So yeah, a new system needs to be built, but like how the fuck do you build that system and then convince the whole network to get on board? That's what people try to do with crypto. And it doesn't work because the government the Fed has to build it. The Fed has to hire a company that builds and maintains it, or there has to be a new Fed or something. Because, and maybe I'm not being creative enough in how I'm thinking about this. And look, the crypto wizards out there would be like, we don't need a Fed, we can regulate ourselves. Like, fuck off. You're just waiting to cash out on your token, you bastard. Like, you know what I mean? Go back to Tulum and put on your flowy pants and fucking wait for your token to expire and cash out and fuck off, right? Like, we're trying to solve real problems here. And like, you need some sort of central regulator. Like, otherwise it won't work.
And everything that you just said, Matthew, I actually took it personally because I am a crypto whiz here. So I've been a crypto
Sorry. Sorry.
Actually, there was one point where there was, I actually lost conviction in USDC, if you know what USDC, like,
Yeah, I know USDC.
exactly, right? So, what happened was in May of 2022, because USDC is supposed to be a stable coin, right? It's always supposed to be one USD is
Yeah, yeah,
supposed to be equivalent
it's
to one
pegged to the
USDC.
US dollar. I always thought that was
Exactly.
funny.
It
Yeah.
was pegged to one US dollar. But what happened in May 2022 was I was stuck in Dubai, and I had to do this payment where $2,000 payment with USDC. But then I saw the USDC value fell down by 40%. And you can actually look this up. The whole point of stablecoin is being pegged to USD, and that was depegged. And that's when
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really lost the conviction, because that's where, I mean, Vitalik Buterin, he made like a
Yeah.
$4 million just by buying the dip. And that I just don't get the point there, because if we are trying to build something without a central government, because right now in Africa, places where there is something called unbanked, right? There are people who are unbanked, they don't even have access to banks. But with crypto, all you can do, just open your MetaMask, download a crypto wallet. You can do that in seconds and get your crypto wallet, and then just transfer $100 million. There is no 10-digit limit there. But again, the trust. How do you solve for trust? I think that is something that you were actually talking about. How do we get people on board? And the system shouldn't fail, right? I mean, if the system fails, what's the point? You're losing money. It's money we're talking about. So how do you solve for trust? I mean, that's something I really want to know from both of you guys, because you guys are into fintech. You guys have, you've seen the space so much. You've spoken to so many folks
I've
from
talked a
YC.
lot, so
So talk
Daniel,
about that.
you go for it. I talk a lot, so
I mean, I don't have the answers all of this. I actually really like your thinking, Matt, on a lot of it. I do think, okay, crypto. I call it the ARPANET era. Have you guys heard of ARPANET? Maybe
for
you did.
why
Like
does it? Yeah,
ARP, I mean, it was the version of
pre-internet.
it was like the internet before the internet we have today, and it was like a trial period, and there was a lot of learning, and it was for war. It was for when bombs dropped in the United States, and they had to like communicate somehow if the bombs dropped and the
So
phone lines were
crypto is a currency for third world countries with an unstable currency, like
no, I'm just saying
basically.
it's in an infant
Sorry,
stage.
developing countries. I didn't say
It's in
that.
an infant stage. It's like very new, where there's too many unknowns in the algorithms and the way that they're building it and all of these different things that I am like, it's an unknown quantity. And in a sense, like there's a lot of learnings that are happening all of the time, and they're learning from each other. So it's like ARPANET and the early internet, the 80s, the 90s. They were just learning everybody was learning from each other, and like, how do we use this thing? How do we create a web browser? Like, what do we put in the web browser? Like, I think there's a lot of that in crypto today. So it's an area where people think it's safe, but there's so much refinement happening at such a fast pace. But again, at the end of the day, like it's like a distributed ledger, and you have to make sure it's secure, and you have to make sure everybody can understand like how it works, and there has to be like a lot of like self-regulation. But when you have like corporations or people that are not part of the government, like managing it, like what Matt was saying, there's this bias towards what they need for them to succeed. So like USDC, I know nothing about it. Nothing. All I know is that it's not backed by a government, so there's loopholes in the ARPANET. I call it an ARPANET because it's new. It's a new technology that came out. Whatever people say, like money's been happening for like ever. And like gold was the thing, and then like people started to transact digitally. So even digital currency is so new. You just throw crypto in there, it's like what, it's like another technology that people are learning from. So like there's going to be loopholes in all different types of crypto that no one is going to expect. It's the unknown unknowns of crypto. I don't know if people fully understand the algorithms. They say they do. Everybody's like leading with faith, but I've seen mistakes happen several times. We've all seen it over this last several years, and I'm like, when people say this is the one, I'm like, is it the one? Now, the nice thing about a government is they come in, they step in and fix those problems to stabilize their currency a lot of the time. Good governments will do that. They'll fix the problem on the fly, and they have the people and resources and the ability to print more money or whatever they have. It's just love or hate governments, they're trying to stabilize the currency. a lot of the time. I mean, again, I'm not giving an answer. I'm just saying like it's ARPANET era. For in my head, I'm like, it's so new. It's like it's almost like AI. People know it's going in the right direction, but they're like,
Have you?
yeah,
This is a weird thing. Like we're dependent on the banks adopting this tech. So we saw this with um, FedNow and the other one, the RTP. And we're dependent on the banks having a business use case for investing in implementing it, right? The people at the banks, like have you guys ever met a bank partner before? Like have you guys had conversations with these people, like bank partners?
no, tell us. Yeah.
Most of them have an outsourced ledger. It's not in-house built tech. It's like some license that they bought that they pay for their core. They call it a core. I remember having this long conversation with this Canadian bank, and they would say our physical asset, our asset. They would refer to their ledgering core as their physical asset, whatever. And I was like, what? When you and I had to like stop them. I'm like, are you talking about your API? Like, what is this thing you're talking about? I don't know, maybe they were using SOAP or something like that. But the the genesis of what I'm trying to get to is to say that I actually think that it's going to take a generational shift. I think it's going to be the next generation that comes into those positions that have grown up with tech, that know how to like know what efficiency could look like, and they're going to spend a second going, wait, we're still uploading byte formatted text files? Are you fucking kidding me? Like there's got to be a better way. Like and I think that's probably what's going to happen. And I'm biased. I see it in construction. Like we serve construction businesses. Most of our customers are young guys. And there's like an up and coming generation in construction that needs a better solution. And when we talk to it's funny, sometimes we'll talk to guys in their late 50s and 60s, and they're like, I don't need you, man. I like going to the bank. I like chatting with the people at the bank and walking in with my checkbook, and I like taking out cash. I talked to one guy at a conference right now who accepted payments in silver dollars. He's like in his 70s. He ran like a roofing company, and he's like, yeah, I took payment in silver dollars once, and he's like, I won't, I don't really have my banking app. Like just not interested at all, right? And I think that's what's going on at the banks. And when they look at these new products, they're just looking at their bottom line and how they can make more money. And the protocol that we're talking about, I mean, it would just glaze. It would glaze, wait, I can't earn basis points on this. It's like never gonna happen.
So they have this saying, the innovator's dilemma. There's this book about it where like if we build something better, we lose our revenue today. And I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
that is what you're saying.
Yeah, there is. There is. It's like Visa has become so big that the idea of this network, it scares them. I mean, they built the push to card network. That's pretty cool. Like I think that's innovative. But it doesn't take anything away from their merchant acquiring stuff, right? It just adds to their business. Yeah, like I would be surprised if one of those like Mastercard or Visas built a push-based authentication system. They could do it. Like they have all the rails to do it. Like Visa or Mastercard could 100% build what we're talking about. In fact, like talking about where crypto could come from, the Fed, Visa could do it. Like Visa could have something, and they're connected to all of these different banks. They could make it work faster than probably the Fed could do it. I don't know, man. We'll see what happens, but I think it's going to take a generational shift. It's also going to take a government that's like way more tech forward. Like, you know what I mean? Like somebody that actually understands technology. Like we're still, I mean, dude, we're still in the era. Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm 30, and like when I look at like the people in power, whether I'm not, whatever, I'm Canadian. I have no bone in this current fight that's coming up. But like when I look at them, I'm like, they're both fucking old timers. If I sat down and said, look at how this tech could change the world, they're both fucking clueless. They have no idea what the fuck's going on. Whereas if you took someone like us 30 years from now, we would approach it a lot differently than how they're approaching it. And so I think that's probably what it's going to take, is like this next generation that comes in and says, there's no way forward except for the tech change. There's no way forward except for innovation. Those extra bips on the balance sheet, or the extra room on the balance sheet, is only going to come from innovation. It's not going to come from some magic trade deal. It's going to come from a government efficiency. It's going to come from automation. Dude, I got my visa to the US. This is an example of how bad this is. Okay. I got my visa to the US. They sent it to me by mail. They had the digital thing. So it was all digital and it was uploaded to the immigration office. Like they even said, when you show up at the border, they've already got it, right? They've already got it. And I was like, okay, so why do I have to wait for this thing in the mail? And they're like, well, it's good to have the physical copy. I'm just like, so you're wasting, there's someone that had to sit there, fold the thing, print it out, fold the thing, put it in an envelope, stamp it, and post it. Like, why? Like, just let me show up at the border. You're going to scan my fucking face and fingerprints anyway. Like, what's the point of this? So there's just like shit like that. And dude, I mean, carry that all the way. I mean, changing that little thing, they can't even do that. Trying to change the banking system, like good luck. Like it's going to take some, and that's the crypto. I mean, Harsh, that's the crypto side. You guys are like fucking a little bit of anarchists, kind of, right? Like it's going to take some big drop, and it's actually true. You're not wrong. If you go to places where the currency is fucked, crypto is king, right? So maybe that's what it takes. Is like, but can you imagine, like, dude, if the US goes, the whole world goes. So like why, like the US dollar is, and I guess there's countries that have moved away from a lot of the US dollar backing stuff, but it's still, I don't think it's possible without like absolute chaos, which is a little bit, maybe too deep for this conversation, but I'm just saying like that would be fucking scary, like all of a sudden crazy inflation, or like the US dollar is unstable, so you can't trust it. Like I would not want to live in that world. And hopefully I don't eat my words a few years from now, but like that would be fucking scary, Like what would you even do? I mean, I guess the people with Bitcoin or something are like laughing, They're like, yeah, I don't know.
I think it's a good point that you were talking about the countries, the nations, because I think El Salvador, right? El Salvador has, largely benefited from just using crypto, but also see this. I mean, you're talking about change happening from the innovators and the startup front, right? So I think it's a very slow process, because I see like Stripe just acquired Bridge.xyz.
I know. I was going to bring
one,
that up. Yeah.
right? Like for $1.1 billion, like one of the biggest acquisitions. And I think it's a very slow process. But again, there's this whole thing of human nature where I really think that inefficiency is the biggest employer. That means like inefficiency, no matter how like good technology gets, there are always going to be subsets of groups who wouldn't want to engage. They always want to stay inefficient, like be okay with the old stuff. Do you
But
think it's
Harsh,
a human thing as well?
dude, but some things, like I'm not going to build my own road to LA because the current road is shitty, right? Like there's certain things that you need a community to build. I mean, yeah, like we're entrepreneurs and we go to this, like there's this side of us, and maybe it's the Canadian in me saying this, by the way. There's this side of us that's like, we always have to build our own, but we're not all going to build. There's not going to be different road companies that build that are like owning each road. Like, yeah, the government has to build the road. We need the road to travel from A to B. It's like a fucking thing we all have to agree upon. We pay it in our taxes. It's just there. And payments, for some reason, has been this thing that like we can't agree that it's just a fucking road. It is a road that needs to be paved, and we pay our fucking taxes to the government, who should build this fucking road properly. If the road to LA, if the road from LA to whatever, San Diego was always fucking broken, and you had a politician came out and said, I'm going to finally fix the road, people would vote for that guy. Right. And so really I think it is going to take some sort of person that comes out and says, or some lobbying, and people that say this transaction, like it's 2024. We have a fucking AI that can do my work for me, and I'm still writing on a paper check and sending faxes to BOFA, Bank of America, for disputes. Like, get real, guys. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, why is there such a disparity here between these two things? And I think, maybe it's a Canadian, whatever in me saying, socialist oligopoly thing, saying like, it's like a road. You need the government to come out and build that road. There's no, as a startup, and we've all raised money, like, raising money, you could not raise enough money to build this. There's no way. Like, you can't say, you'd have to get a government contract to build it, and then you wouldn't even need to raise money. You could borrow money against the contract. Like, you wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, but I don't think a startup can solve this. I think it has to come from the government saying, this is super inefficient. This is the bleed, right? This is the bleed in dollars. Checks and cash should be phased out, and we should have a currency, a crypto. It doesn't have to be crypto. Could be some other protocol, but there should be some protocol for a digital asset that is held and it is controlled by and regulated by the Fed. You have until this day to do it. If you don't hand in your American dollars, they're going to be fucking useless after this day. I mean, dude, what do we in Canada, we phased out the penny. There's no coins anymore. We like phased out the pennies and stuff, right? I mean, we've done it before. Like, why not do it again? Yeah, I mean, Americans hate that. They fucking love their cash. Even my customers, like, they love cash. But I don't have cash. I think it's weird.
I love the Canadian penny.
They're gone, dude. They're gone. They're gone now. Yeah. We still have they still have the quarters and stuff. And now we have clown money now. It's like plastic and it's all colorful. Yeah.
Oh wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. Have you ever seen, I don't know if I have any on me, but it's like colorful and it's like clown. I don't know. I think it's funny. It's like clown money, but you have this like plastic thing. You can't rip it, whatever. But like, do you need it now? Should we even have this? There's probably quite an inefficiency of inflation that's caused from just having cash, right?
I mean, there are times when like you're in a weird remote location, at least in the US, where there's literally no cell towers and there's no internet. It's going to change with like Starlink and all of that.
Starlink, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, it's changing now, but there are these weird, odd moments where you're like, oh my God, there's no internet and my phone is dead. Those are those moments where you have like $10 on you and you're like, all right.
But this is where the tech thing comes in. The protocol on your phone knows the balance based on the last transaction that was enacted. Yeah. So like technically.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and then you could always like into that, you could build a margin for error, right? So like the margin of overdraft that you're allowed. So let's say online, you're offline and this local device only knows about a certain balance that existed. And maybe online, based on your transaction history, the buffer of how much you're allowed to transact offline is built into it, like an overdraft.
Got it. I mean, I think it's,
it's possible, dude. It's possible. Yeah. You could have like, based on your transaction history, maybe the bank that you're banking with allows for a 20% buffer of the balance when you're offline based on the risk profile that you have. And when you're offline, the protocol on your phone, basically when you tap your phone, just says that. And then the receiving end is just storing those transactions that then get uploaded later. I mean, it's probably not that simple, but I'm just saying the tech is there. Like, hey, engineering here, like there's a solution to this. Yeah. I think like that exists today. I think credit card processors they'll like store, they're like, I don't know, have you ever carbon printed your credit card before?
No. Although restaurants have done it.
Yeah, like have you been in a store and they take, hey, our machines are out, so they they do the carbon thing. I haven't done this since I was young, I think. Anyways, young, I'm only 30. But like they do that thing when they have no internet service and then they upload it later and hey, maybe the transaction balance. So same thing can exist in the low latency environment. Yeah. You got my product brain spinning here on a solution for this.
Yeah. I know we've been talking a long time.
I know.
I don't want to take too much more time, Matt. I feel like we're running a little over, but
no, it's been I fucking love this shit. Like I don't know, talking about this stuff and the solutions because, and you've lived this too, Daniel and Harsh, like running Just Paid, like the amount of bullshit in the payment systems is just fucked. It slows you down. Like it's awful. And I've been doing it for 6 years with these 2 different companies now. And dude, you just feel the pain and you're like, oh my God, this sucks. And then you talk to more people in the industry. It's a really small niche industry. And like the tech forward people are becoming stronger. Like I feel like it's getting to be a bigger space, but also from the investors' perspective, all the investors basically told us to kick rocks this last like 2 years. And they're now all obsessed with AI instead of fintech. But fintech, dude, we're not done. Like, think about the hour conversation we just had of all the problems that exist in fintech. There is so much more to do. Like, we're nowhere close to where we need to be for this to be a solved problem. And the shitty thing is for new companies building, I mean, dude, you see it in like YC Fintech WhatsApp group. Like, the amount of new, I just saw this most recent batch. There's like 4 fintech companies in the whole fucking batch now.
Wow, it's
And
small. That's not a lot.
there's nothing. And part of the reason is they can't get the funding, and you can't, this is not a lifestyle business. There's no way to start without capital. Dude,
Yeah.
try and go get a bank partnership. The bank's like, hey, can I have 100K in reserve just to play, just to say hi? Give us 100K in reserve, so you can do anything. So
Yeah.
there's no way to enter the industry without venture capital or your own money, and venture capital is taking a back seat, but the innovation has just like there's so much more to do. So I think we're gonna make a comeback. I don't know if it's gonna be crypto, but there's still lots of room to play for fintech
Yeah.
companies.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to do in this space, but
As young folks watching this, like what advice would you just give them, or even like a small roadmap, right? I mean, how to navigate through this whole environment, to the whole tech space. Is there a small roadmap that you could just give, like a couple of pointers would just be amazing.
You're not gonna like this, but I think there's too many people trying to start companies. I know that sounds like counterintuitive, but like, dude, we've been trying to hire a senior engineer, and every fucking senior engineer I talk to is like, I'm starting my own company. I'm like, oh, cool. What's your idea? It's a stupid idea. Like, no offense, but like, I'm just like, dude, it's stuff that people aren't even fucking passionate about. Like, you have not even, like, sometimes I talk to people and I'm like, you've been thinking about this for like a day. Like, you should think of something that's really affected you and like really, like, I think it's harder. It's almost like people joke about this, but it's like a resume checkpoint. Like, I tried to start a company and, I raised VC dollars and whatever. But and to be personally, I fell face first into this just because I wanted to play StarCraft 2 for a semester for free from the government. But like the reality is you should pick something that like affects you personally or that you experience. Like the best thing to do is if you're a cracked engineer and you're listening to this, you should apply to work at Trust, first of all, and you should come work with me, and you should figure out shit that we're dealing with that we're not going to build internally, and then be like, shit, that could be a company, and then go build it, right? But like, find like the real thing first before you say like, oh, I'm just going to go start a company and I'm going to build a face onto ChatGPT. Like, it was like, I don't know, there's a lot of what was that X post? Where'd that come from? Oh, trust payments careers. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Yeah. Anyway, that's my advice. And like, honestly, the people out there that have that real pain of like, feel that problem, they're just building it. They don't need my advice. Like, they're doing it. Yeah. I hope so. Anyway, yeah. And YC was game changing for me because I was an outsider in Canada. Like, but if I would lived in the Bay Area and I grew up with that, you probably don't need to do it, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, I love YC. But like, YC is really good for people that are outside of the ecosystem coming in. Like, if you're in India or if you're in Canada or you're in Europe and you're coming in, I think those people I find get the most benefit. And dude, look at a lot of the most successful companies are all expats. Like, if you think about it, most of them are expats because they're like these outsiders that had this unique insight and they came in to the US in a different market as opposed to like, and that's not true across the board. And I have no data to back that up and I'm biased, but I'm just saying maybe that's true. So yeah.
Awesome. I mean, with that, Matt, this is an awesome podcast.
Thanks.
I learned a lot. You were throwing things at us left and right. I think this is one of my favorite episodes. I appreciate it.
Oh, dude, I appreciate it. Wow. You don't say that to everyone. I can check. Like, I can go back and check. Yeah.
No, this is great. It was
cool.
awesome. I really enjoyed it a lot. But thank you again for being on.